Hi everyone, this is a brief tutorial on the bell curve, or what is also known as a normal distribution. This is a basic concept in the assessment process, and as a teacher you will benefit from knowing the concepts presented here. These concepts provide the basis for quantifying the abilities, skills, and behaviors of students. The evaluation reports, which determine both the students' eligibility for special education as well as their needs, will utilize these concepts, so it is very important for you to understand them. Being able to truly understand a student's disability, as well as your students' strengths and weaknesses, will help you to better help and teach them, as well as to understand what kind of accommodations, modifications, and differentiated instruction they will need. In this diagram, the keys to understanding scores on the bell curve are written in the upper right and upper left-hand corners. Memorize these keys. The first key is, in typical standardized testing, which includes cognitive and achievement testing, a mean score is 100. You can see that we have written on the bottom of the page the score of 100. Since it does not deviate from itself, the standard deviation is 0, which is at the top of the page. A standard score of 100 is at the 50th percentile, which means that out of 100 students, they scored better than 50 of them. The next key is that a standard deviation, that is, how much a student's score deviates from the mean, is generally 15 points. 68% of students' scores will fall between +1 and -1 standard deviations, as seen in this chart. If the mean standard score is 100 and a standard deviation is 15 points, then one standard deviation above the mean, that is 100 plus 15, is 115. One standard deviation below the mean is 85. That is 100 minus 15 points. Two standard deviations above the mean is 100 plus 15 plus 15, which is 130. Two standard deviations below the mean is 100 minus 30. That is 70, as is indicated in the diagram. Although not indicated on this chart, 3 standard deviations above the mean would be a standard score of 145. That is 100 plus 45. And 3 standard deviations below the mean would be 55. A very small percent of the population would score at this range. And as we indicated before, 68% of the student scores will fall between +1 and -1 standard deviations, which we now know would be between the standard scores of 85 and 115. 68%, remember, divided by 2 equals 34%. So, if 100 is at the 50th percentile, if you add 34% to 50%, you get an 84, which means if a student achieves a standard score of 115, one standard deviation above the mean, he scores better than 84 out of 100 students at the 84th percentile. If the student scores one standard deviation below the mean, he scores at the 16th percentile. That is 50 minus 34, you get 16. And what that means is the student who scores one standard deviation below the mean, he scores better than 16 out of 100 students, or at the 16th percentile. I hope you have enjoyed this brief introduction to the bell curve. I'll be expanding on this in our next tutorial. Thank you for listening.